Thank you, Sir Mike. So now let's move on to what a RACI matrix is. This is one of the more important tools for planning and organization in project management. The RACI matrix is also known as the responsibility assignment matrix. It's a linear type of matrix or a chart that identifies all the key roles and responsibilities of a task, including its stakeholders. The key word here is key roles and responsibilities. Okay, so this matrix or this chart describes and maps out all the key activities and deliverables of a project. So, at a glance, you will be able to see the completion of tasks, milestones, and all the decision points of any given project per activity. The RACI matrix has four components. It's interestingly enough and creatively enough, it's made up of four letters: R, A, C, and I. R stands for responsible, A for accountable, C consulted, and I means informed. The responsible component in the RACI matrix is the one in charge of doing things. This individual or this group of persons are the ones that actually perform or do the tasks identified because they fall within their specific area of expertise and it's part of their day-to-day responsibilities. So what they do is they have to ensure the timely and satisfactory completion of deliverables. This means not just doing the tasks assigned, but completing them on time, in a timely manner, and in good and satisfactory condition. Now, the accountable component speaks of the decision makers. This is the person that actually decides or signs off or approves the specific task or activity identified. This person or these persons are the ones held accountable for the result of the task, whether it is completed or if it fails. So, accountable persons do not actually need to do anything. They don't need to perform the work, they don't need to be involved with completing any part of it. They just approve the task. Essentially, the buck stops with them. Now, the C part of the RACI matrix refers to persons that need to be actually consulted for inputs regarding that specific activity. Why do they need to be consulted? It's because these specific individuals or group of people possess the required knowledge or resources essential to the progression or the completion of the assigned task or activity. Finally, the last component, the I, refers to the individuals that just need to know the result of the task, whether it is completed or it's still pending. These persons or group of persons have no active role or contribution in completing assigned tasks. They do not actually need to be formally consulted, but it's just good to keep them in the loop. Now, to do the RACI matrix, we begin by identifying all the tasks in specific order. Here, we have a very basic example of procurement related activities. We begin with the market study, which gives us an overview of the specific technical specifications and conditions and the reason why we need to procure something. Once we are done with the market study, we move on to the actual documentation which initiates the procurement process, which is the purchase request. Once the purchase request has been completed and all the supporting documents included, then the actual procurement process begins. After the procurement process is completed, then part of the next step or the next phase is the project implementation. Once project implementation is complete, then we now move on to the payment. So as we see here on the left side of the matrix, we start by identifying all these critical steps, all these critical stages in the order that we normally would go through them. Now that we have identified all the steps required for the project or the procurement activity that we are going to undertake, we now include all the stakeholders that are or that will be relevant to complete this activity. So for this example, we have the department head, the project manager, the project team, and the finance team. All the stakeholders we now place at the very top of our matrix. From this, we see there are some examples that identify the stakeholders as specific individuals or specific actors for any given activity or project. There are also some, depending on the use case or the need, that identify them as teams or groups of individuals. Once we have completed the steps and identified the stakeholders, we now move on to fill the actual roles of every individual involved for every step. For here, let's take the case of the market study. The market study will be prepared by the project team and approved by the project manager. The department head will just be informed that this is the result of the market study, these are the contents and the terms thereof. Next, we have the purchase request, which will again be prepared by the project team. They will be the ones responsible for completing it. The project manager will obviously be consulted, but the one who will approve the purchase request will be the head of the department. Interestingly, at this point, since it involves uh, a purchase request which has a monetary value, the finance team will obviously need to be informed. This will probably include the accounting and the budget so that they can do their proper check and balance and ensure that this activity is properly um, budgeted. When we move on to the procurement proper, we see here that the one approving the procurement process will be the department head. The project manager will obviously be consulted, and the project team will be informed once the procurement process is complete. When we now move on to the implementation, after the procurement is completed, we go back to the project team who will be the ones to do the implementation of the project. The one approving or the one accountable at this step or at this phase will be the project manager. The department head will just be consulted. Once the project has been implemented, we go now to the payment step or the payment phase, the last phase. At this point, the project manager will be consulted and the department head will just need to be informed, but the one that has to sign off or approve on the payment will be the finance team. Now, if we notice here, there are some steps in the RACI matrix that are unfilled. Depending on your situation, depending on the steps you identify and the stakeholders involved, there might be a situation where not every box will need to be filled because, as we will learn later on, the more that we involve people in each step and each phase, the more that um, the process becomes complicated and it might take longer to complete each step. So we've seen how to fill up a RACI matrix. Again, to recap, we begin by identifying on the left hand margin all the steps in order. And at the top of our matrix or our chart, we identify the stakeholders. Then we fill up the specific roles and responsibilities of each actor for every step. Once we filled up the matrix, then we now resolve and analyze the ambiguities. What do we mean by this? For each and every step, there should only be one accountable person for each task. Why? Because having two or more accountable persons in a stage or in a task could probably lead to dispute. Now, we also see if the stakeholders have too many responsibilities. Why would this be important? Because we will be able to see if the load is balanced, or if a certain group of people or if a certain person is having too much responsibility just actually doing the work. For tasks that need to be consulted, always remember that the more people we include as persons that need to be consulted, it will take a long time to complete that specific activity. Lastly, the final step is to verify and recheck if all the tasks have been included or if any stakeholders were left out or omitted, and if there was someone who was not informed. So now that we have completed our RACI matrix and we have resolved all the ambiguities, the final step is to share the finished product or the final matrix with every member of the team. All the stakeholders must be aware of the roles and responsibilities of every member of the team for every step or stage in the project. More importantly, everyone has to agree that the roles and tasks specified in the matrix are theirs. This will create a situation where everyone is on the same page. Every member of the team acknowledges that is my task, this is your task, so that there is no miscommunication. So, this concludes our discussion on what a RACI matrix is and why it is important. To recap, it maps out the entire process of a project with every critical step identified and all the stakeholders included. Thank you, and I now turn you over to Sir JP.